Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms chats. For since March, I've been doing live videos several times a week to talk to parents about issues that they need to know about education. So we've talked about distance learning and how to get kids back on campus safely. We've talked about learning at home, and today we have a very special guest. We have Sarah Baray, PhD, who is the CEO of Pre-K for SA. Let me put up my little banner here. Right, so Pre-K for SA, well, she'll explain more about it, but we have a new post on the blog that explains, it's kind of an enrollment guide about like how to get your kids involved. So, but they have to be in just the right age range. There's certain conditions on it, but this is one of the best early childhood programs in the city, and they're really a leader in that, not only at their own centers, but also the impact that they have on other educators and on other centers in San Antonio. So, Sarah, thank you so much for coming to Charter Moms Chats. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
I am too. Thanks for having me. Delighted. This is great. The chance to talk with your audience because they're really informed educational advocates. So excited to have the opportunity. Thanks.
Oh, and that's my cue to plug the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group. So if you're watching the video and you're not a member yet, please join, because there are current and former and future Pre-K for SA families in the discussion group. And so if you ask a question about Pre-K for SA, they will chime in with their own experiences. And I've heard lots of great things about families' experiences at Pre-K for SA over the years. So I have a bunch of questions I want to ask Dr. Baray about Pre-K for SA so that our audience can learn more about it. So as I was reading about, so the mission actually talks about, it's not talking about 4-year-olds, it's talking about the San Antonio workforce, which seems really ambitious, right? Because like the kids in the centers are really small, but someday they will be big people and they will be, making a difference in what San Antonio's workforce is like. And the goal talks about, within a generation, changing San Antonio's workforce so that we can have world-class industries here. So, and there's already some data now, right? Since it was it 2013?
Yes, 2013. Yes.
Okay,
first census.
So, so tell me about tell me about the ambitious goals, how it impacts the workforce, and what data we're starting to see, like from the UTSA studies, about what impact Pre-K for SA has on children that might influence their future education careers and their jobs down the road.
Yeah, so a lot of people are surprised to know that Pre-K for SA is actually a workforce development initiative. But when you think about it, the place to develop a strong workforce is by starting at the beginning, right? So San Antonio in 2012 decided to invest in their workforce through high quality early learning. And so our first group of students went through in 2013-14, and we've been tracking them ever since. We have a third-party evaluator who looks at every year at our outcomes, and what that has shown is that children enter Pre-K for SA typically below the national norm and key indicators, and they leave us well above the national norm. But we wanted to know what happens after that, right? So we commissioned a study with University of Texas at San Antonio, the Urban Education Institute, and they looked at our first cohort, what happened to them once they went through 3rd grade. And what that study showed is that our children had better math, better reading, better attendance, and lower special education rates than their peers who did not attend. And that's really powerful, because that says, even with just 1 year of high quality early learning, that children have lasting impacts. And when we think about, obviously, having better reading and math scores is beneficial to the children, but the better attendance was really a big surprise, in that the children who went through Pre-K for SA tended to go to school 10 more days every year than their peers. So by the time they got to 3rd grade, they had 8 more weeks of school than their peers. And so obviously more time in school is more learning time, especially because children's brains are developing rapidly, but it also means more money for our school. That study estimated that our public schools benefited by getting $22 million more by having children in school that many more days. So really powerful results. And I will tell you, I came into Pre-K for SA in 2016, and they told me, we do these external evaluations, like, oh, that's great, because I'm an educational researcher. And they said, and we're going to study our very first cohort and look at the outcomes. And I was like, that's crazy. Nobody studies their program in the first year, and we have a panel of national experts that guide our research. And they all said, what are you doing? Nobody looks at their first cohort because it's a startup program. So to have those kind of powerful results with the first year was really, everyone said, wow, this program is amazing to get those kind of results year over year, and then to still have them sustained with the first cohort. So we're excited about that. And what that lets us know is that the model works, and that we, San Antonio is actually the first city in the nation to try to do large-scale free public education for pre-Ks at the quality level. A lot of programs are doing access, but San Antonio started with quality, and we've proven you can take large-scale public pre-K to scale and still have high-quality programs. So it's really exciting news.
Yeah. So I want to recap the key points there. So basically, the first group of students from pre-K for SA, they went as 4-year-olds for 1 year, and then they were evaluated as 3rd graders. And the study showed that they not only were they getting better test scores, but they were also attending school more, and that had cumulative impacts of more learning and more funding for schools. And that it's pretty amazing to get that dramatic a result so early. But like, I mean, you're continuing to collect data and show. And so I think that's when people ask sometimes, well, why is the city involved in this? Then I think the answer clearly is that it's already having an impact on these kids. And the hope is that it will have a longer term impact on the workforce, so having a better educated, more prepared workforce.
Yeah, the idea of cities being involved in education is only kind of an anomaly in Texas. In lots of states, cities are involved in education, but of course in Texas, we usually leave that to the state and to school districts. However, cities have always been involved in one way or another by supporting the school districts. And in this case, we're increasingly seeing schools or cities become involved in the early education space because it's education that's not mandated at the state level. So the school districts with K-12 education have a lot on their plate. So being able to support that and supplement that by starting with early learning programs is really important. And I've been thinking a lot about recently about the brain research that we know now that we didn't know even 10 years ago. And I think if we were to redesign our public school systems or start those right now, we probably would start with free public education at birth and go all the way through 8th grade, and maybe high school would be the place where we had some choices and it was more of a mixed delivery system, because we know those first 5 years are critical, and where children spend those first 5 years and the kind of care and learning they get really does determine a lot about their future outcomes, not just in the school system, but in career and in life. And so I think San Antonio is really fortunate to have a program like Pre-K for SA, and I'm very grateful to be part of it because it's an exciting opportunity. As a lifetime educator, this is my favorite project so far, so I'm really glad to be part of it.
Yeah. In the charter school world, there are actually in other states, like for example, Rhode Island, where there's a lot of city involvement in the charter school world. And so, but that's again, like Texas, there's no city involvement in charter schools.
That's right. It's very different.
Yeah. But there's like deliberate school integration efforts that happen in Rhode Island, but it's at the city, and same thing like in Denver, or Indianapolis, like there's city involvement, but no, it's something folks in Texas are not used to. But you're talking about like sort of the 0 to 5. Like I remember, so my husband comes from a family of a lot of educators in Arizona, and his godmother is a retired science teacher, and she sent me a book called The Scientist in the Crib. And while I was still pregnant with my first child, and I'm like, that book completely changed like how it got me reading all kinds of stuff about zoology, comparative biology, of like, because like children are like little animals, right? And like
they are.
But like that book changed how I parent my kids, especially my son. And I think just getting that knowledge, I'm so thankful. And same thing, like well, before we came on the air, I was talking about University Presbyterian Children's Center, which is where my kids went to. It's right by Landa Library, and it's one of the best centers. And actually, they're part of the grants program.
They are.
Yeah, so which we'll talk about. But and the reason I found that center was that like a friend of my mom's just said, oh, well, they have a waiting list for a couple years, so go ahead and get your kids on the waiting list. So like, this is before I started the blog, and like I had no idea. And then so I feel like I've had angels looking out for me, like, here, read this book, here, get on this waiting list, and that's part of what SA Charter was trying to do, right? We're trying to be we're trying to be the angels for like a bigger group of parents, who need that information at the right time when they can make a difference, right? And so if you have a 3 or 4-year-old and maybe you hadn't heard about Pre-K for SA, well, now you have. So
that's good. Yeah, and it takes that, right? As moms, and I remember that even being an educator and being a new mom, thinking, oh my gosh, look at all the choices that they're out there. What am I doing for my child? Where's she going to go to, childcare and then school and all these, and it can be really overwhelming. So having resources like SA Charter Moms and a network and something like Pre-K for SA that can help guide families is really, really important, because especially in early learning. Families, not one solution is going to be the right answer for any one family. And we say that even about pre-K for say. Our centers are fabulous, they are amazing, but they're not the right answer for every family. So we support all programs across San Antonio, including University Presbyterian, but also our programs in public schools and private schools and charter schools, parochial schools, because we really think families should be making those decisions based on what makes sense for them. Early learning has always been delivered in a mixed delivery system of faith-based organizations, public, private, and so we think that'll be the case for the foreseeable future, and we want to support that. And it's one of the things that actually drew me to Pre-K for SA is that it was such a brilliant design, and it wasn't saying there's one way. It was saying, let's build a high quality center and then figure out how to help more centers reach those quality measures. And that's really what we've been about. And we've made great progress in San Antonio, not just for the children in Pre-K for SA, but we're seeing more and more programs in San Antonio that are meeting those high quality standards. You know, the National Institute of Educational Research has a quality rating system every year, and they look at how programs meet the 10 national quality standards. And more of our San Antonio programs are working towards that with the help of our professional learning and grant. So lots of exciting things across the landscape in San Antonio, which is helping children today, but it's also helping families today, and certainly will help our workforce in the future.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Like sometimes I'll read things like in national media, and they say, "Oh, well, San Antonio has universal pre-K." It's like, well, not quite, but that doesn't you know, like just because it's not universal, that like it's like don't minimize the impact of it, right? Because so there's the I want to make sure people understand there's the 4 centers, right, which directly serve about, is it 2,000 students
2,000
per year, right? Okay, and then but then in addition, we've mentioned the grants program, right, where it's like the place where my kids went, like there's the grants program, and then there's also the professional development program. So if we could talk about those 2 pieces, or talk about those pieces and how it makes it like a broader impact, right? It's not every child, it's not every 4-year-old in San Antonio, but it's thousands of 4-year-olds in San Antonio that are impacted.
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, by the end of our 8-year, we will have benefited over 450,000 young children in San Antonio, and that's through a combination of those that are served in our centers, and we will have served over 12,000 of those by the end of this school year. We then serve another 3,000 in our grants program, directly providing support to them each year. But then there's also, we provide over 10,000 hours of professional learning to teachers every year who are in all these other different programs. And of course, that's improved the quality of their instruction so that the children can benefit from that. So it's this combination of really looking at the landscape and supporting the whole infrastructure and building a strong early learning infrastructure that's making a big difference. And with reauthorization, which, you know, we're coming to the end of our first year first year initiative, which was 8 years. And so in November, we'll be up again for another 8 years. And with reauthorization, we are expanding so that there will be universal access for every family that wants it in San Antonio. And what that means is there are 25,000 4-year-olds on average every year in San Antonio, and about 60% of those qualify for free public pre-K by the state standards. And so Pre-K for SA supports those and supports programs that are providing that. But then that leaves 40,000 or 40% of our children who do not qualify for that. Now, some of those children can afford it, or their parents can afford to pay for high quality pre-K in the private sector, and we think they should. I mean, that's, if you're able to pay for it, you can access it, that's great. What we're concerned about and what we're going to focus on are those families that fall in the gap. So if you're a family of 4 and you make more than $45,000 a year, you don't qualify for free pre-K in the public sector. And yet we estimate it takes about $65,000 a year to afford it in the private sector. So there are 3,000 families every year that fall in that gap between being eligible and being able to afford it. That's where we're going to focus in our next 8 years, so that every family in San Antonio will have access. So they can either access it through some of our free public pre-K programs, through Pre-K for SA, or through one of the many programs that we partner with to create seats for those 3,000 families to go free to pre-K. Because that's really how we're going to build a strong, vibrant future, is by making sure all of our young children have access. So that's where we're headed with reauthorization.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great vision, you know, that of making sure that kids get the educational support they need, and it's not dependent on Right. I mean, well, education is supposed to break the cycle, right? It's
Yeah,
not supposed to pass on hardships from one generation to the next. It's supposed to
right.
liberate the next generation so that they're
Mhm.
not bound by the hardships of
Yeah,
the generation that came before. So that's
right.
that's so and then I guess one thing also that there are like partnerships, right? Like through
Yeah,
like I guess the New Frontiers Public Schools and then
yeah,
also Edgewood ISD, right,
yes,
at the Gardendale Early Learning Center. So that's like the the theme I think is that right that pre-K first aid is always looking for ways to extend and to reach
yeah.
even more 4-year-olds in one way or another.
That's right. So we rely on our partnerships as a way to leverage the resources, right? So with New Frontiers Public School, that is a public charter school network that didn't have pre-K, but yet we were enrolling many of the New Frontiers families when they had 4-year-olds, they would come to a pre-K for SA center. We said, well, this just makes good sense to partner with them so that we already have their children. And so let's partner to align to make sure that when they go from pre-K for SA into their kindergarten experience, it's a really great aligned program because the more years that you have high quality, the better off you are. And then with Edgewood, Edgewood is just, I can't say enough about that district and all the great things that they're doing and the innovations and their new superintendent, well, he's not new anymore, but he's their most recent superintendent, Dr. Hernandez, is fantastic and really thinking about how do you transform urban education in a landlocked district who is really trying to think about new ways to ensure that all children are educated at very high levels. And of course, Edgewood has a long history of uneven educational performance. And so when they asked, they said, would you partner with us in thinking about creating high quality early learning? We said, of course. We really believe that what we're doing in our pre-K for SA centers can be replicated in traditional public schools. And again, I've spent my career in public schools, both working in them and preparing educators for them. So I'm excited to be able to show that, yeah, you can do this. And so at Gardendale, we are building out a model pre-K through second grade program. Last year we had pre-K and K classrooms, and this year we have pre-K through second grade. And so families are getting that 4 years of a really high quality early learning experience. And we're learning what does it take to replicate this model in the school system. And we're talking about opening up another one in Perales Elementary School, possibly. So that's what we're really looking to do, is partner with the different programs to figure out what works for them. So people will ask, are you going to open up any more pre-K for SA centers? And we don't really plan to, because the centers were opened up as demonstration sites of what's possible. So we've already proven that. We've said, here's what it looks like when you have high quality. Here's what it looks like when you have a program built to meet quality standards. Now we want to build the capacity of all the other programs in the community to meet those standards as well. And that's probably going to look a little different in every district and in every program, because different programs or different districts have their ways that they approach things, right? But we're also, one of the things that the pandemic has and COVID has helped us to really accelerate is our outreach to those families that are providing early learning education in their homes and in smaller family care centers, because we now have a remote learning option and resources to say, if you're a parent at home and you want to help with your child's development, here are some activities you can engage in, here's some lessons you can use. We're happy to share with you and partner with you, because again, we think it's important that families make those decisions about how and where their young children should be educated, and high quality early learning can actually be implemented in any setting. And so that's what we're really about, is showing how that looks in the different settings and how we can support early learning teachers, whether they're a family or whether they are in a center or a school district.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to tour. I've toured the South and the North
Yeah,
centers over the last few years, and now I miss doing school tours.
yeah. Me
That's something
too.
that's something I hope it's like I need a vaccine or something so I can go do school tours again,
Yeah,
because like I don't want to
yeah,
expose the kids. I don't want to get exposed, but
yeah,
I'm grateful that I did go on those tours when I had the
yeah,
chance. Then I could see, like, I could learn about high scope, and I could
yeah,
see like the calm. It's not primary colors. It's like
yeah,
kind of earth tones, and
yeah,
and then there's like places for kids to retreat and have like a quiet
yeah,
place to read, and then there's images, like words and things, text on the walls, so that to
yeah,
remind kids about how to express themselves in a
yeah,
constructive way. And yeah, if you could maybe sort of like paint a picture a little bit, if there's families listening to this thinking like, well, gee, maybe I want to get my kids enrolled in pre-K for SA, like sort of
yeah.
what the centers are like, and what the educational philosophy is, and how to get kids excited about learning.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so our everything we do at Pre-K for SA is deliberate, and it's based in, we have decades of research that shows what works in early education. And it's not what a lot of us thought when we first started. When I first started in early ed, it was all about primary colors and lots of bright stuff and everything plastered on the walls. And what we've learned over the years is that actually is pretty distracting to young children, and that young children learn best when they are in a natural environment, and if we're bringing colors in, colors that the children have brought in or that the children have created. So our classrooms are set up very deliberately to encourage children to learn and explore and play, and to develop their foundational academic thinking, mathematical thinking, literacy, scientific thinking, because they're interacting with materials and with people. It's not about having particular assignments or materials that the children have to do a certain thing with. It's about children's imagination. And so if you were to walk into our classrooms at the beginning of the year, the classrooms would look really simple. There would be basic materials out, some blocks, maybe some manipulatives on a shelf. There's obviously a dramatic play area with a few things in there. There's art, a few art pieces out, things that they can play with. And we teach the children very deliberately what each section of the room, how it's set up, what the materials are for. And because routines and procedures are really important for the children, because when they have predictable routines and procedures, they're much more in control of their own behavior, and they're much more in control of their own learning. And so we have the first 30 days, and that's really about teaching the routines and procedures and what school is all about, so that then we can add more complexity to the classroom based on what the children are interested in. So the children really are the curriculum. And so it changes a little bit every year based on what the children want to do and what they want to learn. But it's all centered on an instructional framework called High Scope, which High Scope has over 50 years of research that shows that when children have access to the High Scope curriculum, they have better outcomes, not just in K-12, but in college and career, and actually better health outcomes. And which is amazing, right? But the most recent, so with High Scope, it started in a small child care center outside of Detroit in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And they have been studying that same group of children and a group of peers that didn't go through the program for over 50 years. And what the latest research showed was that not only were the children who went through the program better off, but the children of the children who went through the program had these same kind of outcomes, and the grandchildren of the children, because what it showed was that it makes such a difference in people's life choices and the way that they, how much they're able to take control of their own lives and make decisions that impact not just them, but their families, that it really has this long-lasting impact. So that's really powerful, which is why we follow the High Scope curriculum and why we implement it with fidelity. And we say, it's got 50 years of research behind it. It's not easy, because I will tell you, as a teacher, it's easier to go in and tell children what to do and have them all kind of sitting in the same place and doing all the same thing at the same time. But in our classrooms, children are all over the room. They're allowed to take the materials where they want to take the materials. They're allowed to do with it what they want to do with it, to construct, come play. Now, at the end, the trick is, at the end of work time, you must put everything back, which is where labels come in, and parents are often amazed. Oh my gosh, the children are picking up and putting everything back. And of course, because that's part of being in the classroom, is putting our materials back so we know where they are the next time. But it helps children develop a strong sense of independence and interdependence with each other and critical thinking that has been shown. There's a brain process called executive function that is what helps us, right, to plan, to set goals, make plans, to work our plans, to revise our plans when they don't work, and to know how to negotiate problems when things come up and they don't go the way we're supposed to go. We thought they would go. What do we do? And so when children develop strong executive function, they're shown to have better behavior. They do better academically. But the reason that children who have High Scope do better in career and in life is because they have the strong executive function that helps them negotiate those things in life that happen. In college, it's your financial aid runs out, or you don't get the class you need, or your roommate drives you crazy. And then in life, right, your career, you get fired, or your boss is a jerk, or whatever. If you have strong executive function, it helps you to negotiate those things and to understand that you can have some control over that and what you can do about it. So A lot of people think that early learning is about learning numbers and letters, and that's important, but what it's really about is building that strong brain architecture, because the architecture you have in your brain by the age of 5 is pretty much the architecture you're going to have for the rest of your life. And so it's important that we do everything we can to help children develop a really strong brain architecture from the beginning. So that was a very long-winded answer to say that, but
it makes sense with what I've seen. Like, I remember observing one of those meetings where, like, it's not the first thing they do in the day, but it's like, there's a point where, like, the teacher and the group of children sit around the table, and it's like, well, what center are you going to go to today, or what's your goal? And then they say it out loud, or they write it down, or they draw a little picture on their chart, and they go do it, and then there's accountability, right? There's the cleanup, and then they're saying, well, did you accomplish your goal? And it's really sweet to see young kids doing it, and it does. These are the same. It's the same kind of, like, if you articulate what your goal is, right? It's like, like, we want San Antonio Charter Moms to be like the trusted source for education information. How do we get there, right? Nobody told me what the roadmap was. Like, my board and I had to come up with the roadmap, and then we're trying to figure out how to get there and build the team that it takes to get there. So like, what the 4-year-olds are doing and what I'm doing, it's executive function. It's the same thing, right?
That's right. And it is, and so as we call it, plan, do, review. So what did you plan to do? Then go do it, and then let's review. Did you do it? And we teach them too. It's okay to change your plan, but understand whether you changed it intentionally or you changed it because you just forgot and got distracted, and what was the result of doing that. And when children do that over and over and over again, they develop those skills that help them understand, oh, what do I need to do if I want to accomplish my goal, or if I decide to change my goal? And all of those things are fine. And what do I do if it all falls apart, right? So it's amazing what young children can do. I think we often underestimate what young children are capable of if we set up the right environment for them and if we provide the right guidance for them. I'm always astounded. And so I would say, if it's sad for me, because one of my favorite things is to take people on tours, because seeing a pre-K for SA classroom is such a joyful experience. And I always say, if you're having a bad day, come out to one of our centers, because you will feel like the world is going to be all right when you see the 4-year-olds. But with COVID, we can't have visitors in our centers. And so I'm hopeful that we will have a vaccine and things will return to some sort of normal soon, so that we can share that joy with outsiders.
Yeah, even things like, like the buses have the cute little, 5-point harnesses for the 4-year-olds, right? And then like the carts full of meals, right? And then they're so lovingly made, and with all the dietary restrictions labeled. And so I was like, that's part of what we talk about in the blog post and the enrollment guide, is like, there's all these like, just so many thoughtful things about how the centers are run that make it accessible to families, right? Like the sliding scale for tuition to make it accessible, like having bus transportation, which a lot of early childhood centers don't. And, the fact that the meals are tailored, right? And then, it's a very multicultural groups, right? So there's certain types of meat that just not on the menu, because it would exclude too many families. So
that's right. Yeah, so we've really tried to think, and one of the things I value most about pre-K for SA is that we try truly to live up to the notion of thinking about what children and families need, and doing that even if it's inconvenient for us. And I will tell you, as someone who's spent a lot of time in school, that's not always the case. I've often said schools are all about children and families until it's inconvenient for the adults in the building. And that's not because the adults are mean or don't want to do a good job. It's just that sometimes that what makes sense inside the school doesn't make sense to children and families, and those of us in school don't always know that. So we try very hard at Pre-K for SA to listen to our families and to listen to our children, and to say what makes sense for them. And so even with transportation, transporting 4-year-olds is expensive, because you have to have special buses that have what would make families feel comfortable about putting their 4-year-old on a bus. Well, it has to be a specially designed harness and seat, so it's all safe. But it's important, because we know that if we didn't provide transportation, some of our families wouldn't have access. And it's really important to us that if somebody wants to come to Pre-K for SA, they can. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, Pre-K for SA is only open to certain families. It's actually Pre-K for SA is open to any family in San Antonio that has a 4-year-old. You have to be 4 by September 1st. But we have different ways to do that. So for families that qualify based on state guidelines, they can come free. For families that don't qualify, we have a very affordable sliding scale tuition program. And so that notion that somehow you can't come if you don't qualify for the state is not accurate. And so we are always telling people, no, please apply, because we're always open. Now, we can't serve everybody because we only have 2,000 slots, but we do want to serve San Antonio, and we do want to serve those families that it makes sense for them. And this year is a little bit different because we've had to ramp up slowly because of COVID. We opened our centers back up on September 8th, and we are only taking up to 1,000 children in our 4 centers because we want to have plenty of space, and we want to make sure there's not too many children in the room. And so next week we'll bring back our 3rd wave of children, and we're really excited. It's gone really well. The kids and the teachers, everybody's so excited to be back and see one another. We put lots of safety features in place. But even after we take back our 3rd wave, we will have probably 1 or 2 seats in every classroom that are still available. So there's still a chance to enroll. And some of our families don't know that we have a remote option. So if you're educating your child at home, you can enroll with us, and you'll have a teacher and an assistant teacher who helps you with that and who comes up with daily lesson plans, which I would have loved when I was at home with my child, thinking, having to dream up something to do every day. And so really want to encourage folks to reach out. And I know that many of our programs across the city actually are down for enrollment this year. I think in part because families are a little concerned about, is it safe to go back, and is it important to go back, and maybe I'll just sit out this year because pre-K is not mandatory. But I will tell you that children are only 4 once, and that year is so critical to their development that it really is important for families to get connected to those resources, whether it's in person or remotely. And if not pre-K for SA, certainly your local school districts, your charter schools, your faith-based organizations, all of the programs are still open for families and really welcoming. Even if you feel like, oh, I've missed the start of the year, it's okay. And that's the other beautiful thing about early learning is, kids can enter anytime and feel completely at home and as part of the room, because the children are the curriculum, right? So there's not a set, we learned about this yesterday, and so we're not going to talk about that. Your child missed out on that. It's really a process of learning together as a community. And so anytime that families are ready to enroll, I think they should. And what our independent research has shown is literally every day of pre-K for SA matters. There was a direct correlation between the numbers of days that children were at school in pre-K for SA and their literacy scores in reading in 1st grade.
Dose response, right?
Yeah, right. And so it's so important. So, but I also know it's challenging. Families are really confused by all the information that's out there. People said that little ones would be super spreaders, and is it safe? Is it not safe? There's just so much going on. So families who are concerned about that, who have questions, encourage them to reach out to us or one of their other local providers to have those conversations, because I think that's really important that families have good information so they can make the best decision for themselves and their children.
Yeah. So this video is going to live on like in the blog post, and so I want people to know that the normal cycle, the typical cycle is February 1st is
That's
when
right.
enrollment opens for the following school year, and like you said, kids have to turn 4 years old on September 1 of the school year that they would be attending. So that's correct. That's so like looking ahead to February 1 of 2021, that's when kids would start. And it's no, a lot of the charter schools we cover have a lottery system, but pre-K for SA, it's first come first serve, right? So it's kind of like every Monday there's another wave of enrollment, and people accept and do their paperwork and things like that. So this year it's a little different, like you said, that even with bringing a certain number of students on campus, there are still openings in some rooms. So that's why I keep popping up the URL here, so maybe you can go and apply. It's a very simple application. Application's free. And then they can find out if there's a spot. And like you said, that 4-year-old age is really key. And whether they choose the on-campus or if they choose the distance learning option, then they can have support with. And I've done homeschooling both ways. I've done it, seat of the pants, and I've done it like the distance learning way. And it is an extra responsibility when you're the one to be in charge of curriculum. So
and I say that. I was, as a mom, I was like, oh my gosh, I know all about this. And still, I think, oh my word, to have to do this for my own child, it can be a lot. So I think anytime, and just sometimes I think being connected to another classroom with other families who can help think through, what you're going through. And especially right now, because I think people are feeling isolated. And so to be part of a group where with our remote classrooms, there's, we use Flipgrid and Padlet, and families have places they can just talk to each other and share stories and resources and say, let's talk about what it is to be a parent in the middle of this pandemic with a young child, right? So I just think there's lots of reasons for not just the children, but for the families to get connected to a community and a school.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Yeah, I remember like doing sort of pre-COVID times. Like there's the parent cafes. There's a lot of Pre-K First Aid has a lot of programs to support families, and of helping them understand what to do about kindergarten, right? Or like the community explorations, or like the like art program, right? Like Gracias, and the kids get to vote on which nonprofit benefits, and right, it creates civic engagement, and there's so many great programs about like how Pre-K First Aid is designed. And it sounds like the remote learning is creating like a virtual community, sort of like the parent cafe.
It is, and so we're doing all those same things online, and we are doing our city explorations with our remote learning team. With those classrooms, they're actually meeting every other month, and so what a city exploration is the families or the teacher will pick a place in the city that they want to go visit together. It might be a park, or it could be the Alamo or someplace, and say, let's meet up there and let's explore this area and do some things together and spend some time together as children and families. And now, of course, we'll do it social distantly, but and so the families will bring, or we'll have a little blanket, and people will bring their lunch, and kind of a picnic outside or in a space. But it's a chance for parents and children to come together in community and explore some beautiful place in San Antonio. To find out, our city has so many great opportunities for families, free, low-cost places where you can spend time with your children. And so we want our families to understand that and then have that experience. So our remote teams are going out to do that, and love that. We're also still having our parents as partners online, virtually. We're doing our chef program, which is helping families to understand how to make small changes to their diets that have big impacts on their family's health. So the children are getting little packets of the food to learn how their knife skills and to make simple recipes. And we're doing that both in class and with our remote classes. So we're really trying to transform and do everything we do in person. We're doing that remotely as well, with the support of a family member who's there to help and guide the children during the day.
Yeah, and like you said, it takes creativity, and then it also comes down to like every family needs to kind of think about what they're concerned about, and and have conversations, which is why you said that the folks at Pre-K First Aid are open to if parents have questions like, well, how does this work? How does on-campus learning work? How does virtual learning work to benefit my kids, even though they're so young? But you guys are prepared to just explain it, because it happens. The decisions happen kind of one family at a time. That's how the information spreads. That's how change happens.
That's right. That's right. Well, and every family has unique situations. And so, we're happy to talk through what makes the most sense. And if they have questions and, saying if you're not ready to come back in person, that's okay, come virtually. And then maybe you will be, and, or not. Maybe you'll stay remote the whole year, and that works for your family because that's what you were planning to do anyway. And all of that is okay. We're really trying to be careful about not adding to the stress of families. I know a lot of parents are feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough, and now I'm responsible for my child's learning and all of this. And our message is, you're doing great. Like, what children need to know is that they are loved and cared for, and that we're here to support, and that whatever decisions you're making, we want to help you with those, and that we're all doing the best we can, and we're going to get through this together, and to know that you're enough, and that your children are resilient, and that it really is enough for them to know that you love and care for them and are doing the best you can for them. So that's been such an important message. It's always an important message for families, I think, especially moms often feel guilt about what's happening with their children. Are they doing enough? And, all of that. But now, especially during COVID, when some families are juggling working at home and they've got their kids, or they're not working, they're working, at an essential business, so they don't have time to do the remote piece. There's just so much going on. And so we want to be a resource and a help and a reassurance that families are doing good stuff.
Yeah. and it's based on research, right? It's not
Yeah,
guesswork.
yeah.
There's decades of research
No,
that
absolutely.
yeah.
So I would say I'm an educational researcher. I want the data, and I look at that, and that's what we really stick to. And so the things that we talk about and we recommend are the things that we know help children with their development. And so we want to help families understand that and equip them to be able to support that and help the children develop those strong brains. Because again, that's what it's really about: is strong brain infrastructure from the get-go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've gotten some comments along the way.
Good.
So I want to so Melanie, yes, you appreciate
Yes.
the SE Termos discussion group. And let's see.
That's
Oh yeah,
right.
Henry Gonzalez commented. So yes, yeah.
Oh, Henry. Yeah, he's a good friend.
Yeah. That's I'm really proud that to be helping spread the word about pre-K first aid, because it is a key time here, right? To be evaluating 8 years of work and and thinking about the long-term impact and why it's important to continue to develop the sanitary workforce, because that has an impact on the quality of life of all of us. I mean, that's an interest that the city has. So
well, especially now, we've seen families that, when the centers and schools closed in the spring because of COVID, and of course there was that huge economic fallout, we saw many families who said, I've never had to apply for unemployment before. I've never had to get help from the food bank. This is all new to me. And we help them through that. And that's part of the support that we provide, because it isn't just about the children in the future, it's about the families here and now. So how can we help families get connected to the resources they need, whether it's food or, unemployment in a crisis, or in everyday times, whether it's getting connected to job searches or higher education, or something that will give them an opportunity to provide for their families. Because we know that when families are stable and when they have steady sources of income, they're much better equipped to support their children, and it's much better for everybody. And so that's part of our work too, is not just the workforce of the future, but the workforce of today. And of course, helping to develop the workforce in the early learning community, because there's across the nation, there's a shortage of high quality early learning teachers, and San Antonio is no different. And so we're really trying to put a dent in that gap by helping to prepare a pipeline in partnership with our colleagues at Alamo colleges and at our higher ed institutions like Texas A&M, so that we can help equip more teachers to provide that high quality instruction and help more moms get into the workforce, because it's primarily moms who go into early learning, and many of them find out, hey, I can transfer my skills of working with my children into a job, which is great, because again, it helps to support their families. And so lots of resources available at Pre-K for SA to help across the workforce continuum, and those are going to become even more necessary, because it's going to be a while before we get out of this kind of economic downturn, and we know that more families need that help more than ever. So
yeah. Well, I feel like we've given a good overview of like what Pre-K for SA does, like what the long-term impact that it has. That it's not just the centers, it's also the professional development and the grant making. To elevate the quality of early childhood education for kids across San Antonio. And so I'm going to pop up sort of the call to action again, which is, so prekforsa.com is where families can go to apply. So you can go now to apply for the current year, because like Dr. Baray said, there are spots, just because COVID is, the world's a little different now. So, but, and you can also join the interest list to get reminded in February of when the next year's application opens. So that's why you want to go to the Pre-K for SA website. And then, we got another comment. So fun. I love it. Love it when the audience weighs in. So, Dr. Baray, do you have any kind of closing thoughts you want to share about Pre-K for SA, or what you want people to know about it, what you hope the long-term impact will be?
Yeah, so one thing I want folks to know is that we've put up a resource page, and so there's lots of videos and lesson plans that we want families and folks to use. So please come to the resource page, our website, find that there, use that, let us know what you think, and if you have questions, reach out to us. But also want to encourage folks to register to vote. That's October 5th is the cutoff for that, and then go out and vote. Our own children in our centers, you had mentioned our Civic Engagement Initiative. Our children this week are registering to vote, because come November 2nd, actually, actually, they will be voting for a charity to support over the coming year. And so our children every year pick from one of 3 charities, and it usually has something to do with young children or animals, because that's what little kids want and like. And so they'll vote on a charitable organization, and then they'll support that organization over the year. They'll learn about what they do for our community. And then in the spring, as you said, they'll work with local artists to create art pieces that will go into an art auction, and those will get auctioned off, and that money will get donated back to the charitable organization the children selected in their election. And it's important because then our children understand the importance of being engaged in their community, and that they understand that the citizens of San Antonio are investing in them, and this is a way that they can give back to their community and be engaged. They don't have to wait to grow up. They can do it at 4 years old. So encourage everybody to learn more about that process. Do the registering to vote for real, but also then learn about our Gracia San Antonio, and look in the spring for our art auction, because there's some really great pieces in there. I have several myself. I have a little bit of an issue buying children's art, whether it's the pre-K for SA art, or I know some of our other organizations also sell art. I can't help myself. So.
It's good stuff. Maybe I need some for my office, although I have in my home office, but one of these days I will have an office again.
Yeah, well, they look lovely in a home office too.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. I think that, everybody, yes, we talk about that a lot in the group, about how important it is to get registered to vote and participate.
Yeah.
And in the past, I would take my kids with me to vote. This year, I might leave them at home, but we always talk about it, about how important it is.
I'm excited. My daughter gets to vote for the very first time, so she's thrilled. This is like a big moment. So yeah, it's really.
I remember voting for the first time, but it was back at oh gosh, let's see, Laurel Heights Methodist Church used to have these mechanical voting machines. It looked like an old mid-century refrigerator. It was like
the old days, yeah.
No, I know. Now it's like all digital. Yeah, but
yeah. But it's exciting because I used to take her with me to vote too, and so now she's excited. She gets to do it for herself, so it's a big deal. So.
Yeah, that is. Well, I'm very happy for her that she gets to vote. So, and thank you so much for being on Charter Moms Chats and for sharing about pre-K for SA.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I love your group. So I look forward to hearing more from more of your other guests. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, have a great day.